Welcome. Oh, beautiful music to start. I can't think of any better way to start a service that celebrates not only Flip, but also Ida, than with beautiful music. We gather together this day to celebrate an amazing and wonderful soul that we knew by the earthly name of Philip Flip Wingrove. He came into our world on June 19th, 1930, and enjoyed life to its fullest for almost 92 years until his return to spirit on May 8th of this year. Flip blessed so many in the course of his life. The circles of lives he touched reached far and wide. Each of you represents a part of that greater circle that gathers in person or in spirit this day. He lives in your hearts and your memories and is but a loving thought away. Flip's family has gathered here this day. He shared his life with his soul partner and wife, Ida, for 66 years, and together they raised 4 children. Daughters Elizabeth Wingrove and Suzanne Wingrove Hogland are present with us today. We are also joined this day through love with Layla Wingrove and Mark Wingrove, who preceded Flip to spirit. There were arms there to welcome him. Other family includes Suzanne's husband, Eric, grandchildren, Christian Philip Wingrove and his wife, Becky, who are expecting. One soul goes, a new one arrives. I'm sure he'll be blessing that sweet baby. Becky LaGrove Wingrove, Kyla Rose Wingrove Hogland, and Travis McIntyre. Great-grandchildren are Jamie and Juliet. Nieces include Judy Brown and Deborah Copenhaver Fellows. Cousins include Ann Stangland and her husband Paul, Sarah Souse and her husband John Stangland. A deep and rich family, either here in person or via the magic waves of Zoom. Flip's deep friendships with so many are represented here this day in celebration of his life. From his pilot's life with military service, to his breakfast club with other writers and readers and talkers, to Key City Public Theater, where he did many things, including playwriting, and to Unity, where he and Ida found their spiritual home here in Port Townsend. Such an amazing and wonderful array of people, experiences, and shared life. So let us settle in and be present together in the celebration of this extraordinary soul. We gather this day to unite in our joy in knowing Flip, in our grief that he passed back to spirit far too soon for us, and in our faith that he continues his soul journey into beautiful and amazing realms beyond this one. So often we hear that the opposite of life is death. How untrue. We need only watch the cycles of nature itself in our world and see that it's not true. A garden reminds us of the wonder of each phase of expression, from seed to sapling to flowering and bearing fruit, all amid the changing seasons of life. Sometimes seen and sometimes unseen, but ever present. For life endures. It changes shape and form, all in perfect season, but it never fails to exist. we need but remember one thing. The true opposite of death is not life, it is birth. For everything is life, life enduring, life expressing, life eternal. Birth and death are those portals that our souls journey through. There are no more sacred places to stand with one another than at these portals that our souls journey through. Here we hold the presence of God for and with one another. And this unconditional love that allows us to stand in this sacred place will transcend everything else and keep us linked forever. Looking to the night sky, we can feel the expanse of the universe with all its possible realms and galaxies. In the ancient traditions of many, this is the perfect place to look, to remember the power of love, to unite our hearts with those in the other realm, linking them to our world. In the stars in heaven, it is said, perhaps they are not really stars, but rather openings in heaven, where the love of our lost ones pours through and shines down upon us to let us know that they are happy. There is a beautiful reading that expresses the beauty and love of the journey of soul, ever accompanied by loved ones, with the wind of hope in our sails and in our wings. It's called There Is No Death, and it's by Anonymous. I am standing on the seashore. A ship at my side spreads her white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She's an object of beauty and strength, and I stand and I watch her until at length she is just a speck of white cloud, just where sea and sky come together to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, there, she's gone. Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side, and she is just as able to bear her load of living weight to her destined harbor. Her diminished size is in me, not her. And just at that moment, when someone at my side said, there, she's gone, other voices are ready to take up the glad shout, there she comes, on that other shore, and that is dying. Flip Wingrove was blessed with a life well lived, a soul expressed with passion and dedication, a spirit strong and indomitable and full of joy, a true adventure of possibilities realized, and a journey of soul with no regrets. Flip grew up with two brothers in the logging town of Morton, where his father ran a drugstore and his mother was a homemaker. He always loved flying, and he received his pilot's license at only 17 years of age. He went on to receive a BA and an MA in aeronautical engineering from the University of Washington, where he also played football. He served in the Marine Corps as a naval aviator, retiring as a captain in 1957, and then began a 28-year career with Boeing as a test flight engineer. While at the University of Washington, he met his beloved Ida, with whom he lovingly shared all of the rest of his life. In addition to his love of flying, they shared many things. He was an avid sailor who liked to race sea larks, and he sailed his Columbia 36 with Ida to Alaska. They both loved traveling together and even lived overseas several times. They moved to Port Townsend 33 years ago and became beloved members of this community. Flip became a Volunteer of the Year with the Jefferson County Historical Society, was active with the Key City Public Theater where he wrote award-winning plays. He was involved with writers' groups and was a dedicated member of this Unity spiritual family. He shared his wit, his intelligence, and his kindness with one and all, and he has left permanent blessings on this community, along with deeply personal blessings on all of our hearts. Recently, a dear friend and intuitive shared with Ida that Flip had come to her with a message for her. He was flying in a small plane, doing loops, and soaring with complete freedom and joy. He shared that his flying conjured the same wonder and joy as Ida experiences when she plays her music. And so may their souls both forever soar. There is a famous poem from World War II that was written by a 19-year-old named John Gillespie McGee Jr. in 1941 and sent to his parents, where it was there to comfort them when he died 4 months later in his Spitfire plane. Since then, it has been used in recognition of what flying can be and in honor of all pilots as they return to spirit. High flight. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunwards I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and done 100 things you could not have dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up, the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, which never lark nor eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. And now, Connie Rosenquist and Sandy Rawson bring us meditation from Thais. And so now we're going to get to see Flip through the wonder of technology and the creation of a slideshow that's a celebration of Flip's life. We meet one another at various times in various places in this lifetime. One of the greatest gifts in any celebration of life is to be able to see that loved one, that person over the years, and to see that soul shining out from the eyes of a child and over a lifetime through a rich myriad of experiences. Let these photographic images and music allow you a brief glimpse into his amazing life and those he was blessed to share it with. And say a little prayer. And so we stand on this shore of that great ocean of life, missing already the embodiment of the soul that we knew as Flip, as father, husband, family member, pilot, writer, musician, playwright, and friend. We share in grief that we can no longer touch his physical form, but we need but open our hearts to feel his continued presence, always and forever. As we release him, we give deep thanks for all of the rich gifts his soul left us with. And we trust that as others are welcoming him to his next adventure, he's opening to sharing the gifts of who he is in that next expression of life. We trust that the gifts he left with us will remain alive in the world through all of us. We'll now have a few people speak on behalf of some of the circles that he was such a vital part of. During the reception later, which you are all invited to after the service, I'll invite all of you there at the reception to share your memories and your love for Flip, this amazing man, and thus bring his presence here in our midst through all of your love and your memories. So first of all, on Skype, we have Suzanne Wingrove Hogland on behalf of the family.
I trust you can hear me? Okay. I am Flip and Ida's youngest daughter, and I'd like to tell you my favorite story I have of my father growing up. Most every day of my life, my father would come home from work, throw open the front door and proclaim, "Ta-da!" And we kids would come running to clamor at his feet, so delighted that our father was home. Now, my father was raised by his parents to be a very humble man. But it always seemed to me that my dad understood instinctively that he made the room a better place just by entering it. He knew his place in the grand scheme of things, and the place that he held in our family, in our household growing up, was magical. Yes, my father raised the tenor of the room just by walking through the door. He was a man of humor, a man of ideas, a man of deep thought, and great, great love. He and my mother bought a place on the water, a tiny beach cabin in 1955, and proceeded to work on it, adding on it 4 times to the cottage to turn it into a gorgeous house. There on the shores of Lake Washington, we made our home, and at times it did feel magical. We had boats, small ones at first and then large ones later, and we had wonderful adventures on those boats. As I grew up and found some of my friends' parents to be a bit wild, even a bit scary with their boats, laughing and teasing and sometimes scaring their own children, my father did none of those things. When he was captain of the ship, you knew you were in good, safe, solid hands. You also knew that he had to do what he told you, which is a good life lesson for a father to teach his children. Some of our best memories were spent on the family sailboat, weekend trips, and even week-long trips in the San Juan Islands, spending time in some of the most beautiful country in the world. That's what he brought to his family, a sense of adventure and a deep sense of all the natural world around us and how it was our job to take care of it. Okay, this is actually my favorite story about my father growing up. My father had a tendency to break off into extemporaneous speech at times, the subject of which was the utter excellence of my mother. You see, my father treated my mother like the queen that she is. He would start with something simple and the theme would build. I remember one time on the boat when my father began proclaiming about the excellence of the fresh seafood meal we had just eaten that my mother had cooked in a 1-foot by 2-foot galley. He said to us kids, there are chefs in Europe, in the greatest kitchens in the world, that will not prepare meals as good as what your father has made in that, as your mother has made in that tiny galley for us tonight. On and on he would build with his list of superlatives till he finally got to the crowning statement that we were all waiting for. Honey, you're a goddamn jewel. The profanity was a little titillating to us kids, especially because neither my mother or my father were profane people at all. Like a good writer, my father knew that one word, one singular use of profanity could bring his message home. My mother, for her part, would just roll her eyes and say, oh, Flip, or something simple. How easily in stride she took his voluptuous praise. And for her part, she would tell us girls, if you're lucky, you can marry someone as wonderful as your father. There is something special that happens in a house where the father treats the mother with such respect and encourages the same from the children. There is something very special that happens when she returns his love, admiration, and praise. One thing that happens is that the kid learns that love is a standard, a given. It is something you simply cannot live your life without. So they raised us in a beautiful house on a beautiful lake with boats and adventures and a great sense of our own worth and creativity. We were encouraged to examine and explore areas of creativity, whether it was my sister Elizabeth's cello, my older sister Leela's dancing, my brother Mark's baseball, or my acting. We were encouraged to do it all. We were encouraged that we could do it all. My parents' support of our artistic endeavors has made such a difference to me my entire life, bringing forth worlds that might never have existed before. And this is just one of the things for which I am eternally grateful. One of the best things I will say that I gained from my father is a sense of optimism, a sense of good cheer. At times, seemed a little almost supernatural, his good cheer in circumstances, facing the ugliness of life, and he certainly faced his fair share of it. When I think of my father's long, rich, deeply lived life, I am reminded of one thing he did that really impressed me. He quit his job. After 35 years with Boeing, after years of 7 a.m. mornings, and my father was not a morning person. He made his plans carefully, and he got out of the job that he loved and was exacerbated by at equal measure at times. He left Boeing and went on to consult with aeronautical engineering firms across the country and in some places across the world, having memorable sojourns with my mother in Milan, Italy, in England, and in San Antonio, and other places as well. This allowed opportunities for more freedom with my mother to travel and see the world. What a brilliant example that was, not slogging out for another 10 or 20 years at Boeing, but going where it pleased him, what worked into their plans. That was a new and very important lesson that he taught us. My father lived a series of rich adventures after his initial career at Boeing, each time following his own muse. How many people talk about writing after they retire? Well, Dad actually did it, writing plays and stories which won awards and were produced locally, adding to the rich cultural life of Port Townsend. What a rare treat it was to get to know my father later in life on a whole different level as a writer, critiquing and reading each other's work. As he continued to age and come to the end of his rich and wonderful life, he faced challenges with cognition. There, he was ably assisted with the help of his deeply caring and loving caregivers, and the family is so grateful to all of them for their help in navigating Flip's final years. We are so grateful to Linda, Virginie, Ray, and Alexis for their care for Flip, for their patience, and for their love. Don't get me wrong, everything wasn't roses and Picardy. We had some hard times as a family, primarily the deaths of my two siblings, my older sister Leela and my brother Mark. At times I felt might break us. I saw again and again my father's strength and resolve rise up in the devastation and find his way as my parents together worked their way to the other side of the nightmare. Which brings me to my final, absolute, bar none, favorite story of my dad growing up. We are on our boat and the weather is stormy with no wind. We are stuck below decks and he is motoring a group of seasick teenagers and their mother through the muck to the next port of call. Everyone is sick and too miserable to cook, and so no food is on offer. My father and his rain slicker were giving periodic cheery announcements trying to quell the unhappiness below decks. At one key moment, he sticks his head into the cabin with a brief navigational report and then calls out cheerily, "Hey kids, I think it's clearing up." Right at that moment, a clap of thunder exploded above his head. The laughter that ensued was a much needed break from the gloom, but my father was undaunted. He looked into all that stormy muck and saw a light. He saw a pony out there in all that shit, and he wanted to make sure that we saw it too. I have thought of that boat ride 1,000 times over the years, and it's come to seem like a metaphor for life. Steering through the often gloomy weather, stormy skies overhead, and there's my father, cheerily looking for the bright side and seeing the bright side in all its brilliance and glorious possibility, and making sure that the rest of us saw it too. Goodbye, Dad. Thank you for the love of nature, for the love of silence, for helping us understand what a healthy family looks like. Thank you for modeling what a healthy long-term marriage looks like. I did the best I could to marry a man as wonderful as my father. And last May, my husband Eric and I celebrated 30 years of marriage. He's here today on Zoom paying his respects. I know you're flying high somewhere, Dad, onto your next adventure. Thanks also, and perhaps most of all, for the deep appreciation of the healing power of a water view. I will miss you forever.
Oh, and now this will be a hard act to follow, right? We have some other speakers here. In honor and remembrance and celebration of his military service, I invite Captain John Payne, U.S. ask Navy retired to come forward and to speak. And Glenn's given us a microphone. You don't have to worry about an on-off switch on.
Just use the podium?
Yes.
Impossible to follow that act. It's not an act. That's what makes it so meaningful as well. And can everybody hear me all right if I just? Oh, so I need to hold this up. Okay, hold on. All right. Well, everybody, I think understood, and that was an amazing presentation and very difficult to follow. And some of the things that I'm going to say here, and I'm using notes because my wife has told me that if I don't, I ramble. You may find that I ramble anyway, but I'm going to try to do my best here to give my little talk here. Before I start, do we have any Marines in the group? All right. I always like to find out what my audience is before I go too far one way or another. I'm a naval officer, and the Marines are part of the Department of the Navy, and really the Navy and the Marine Corps get along wonderfully these days. Everybody has to. So the gold wings that we saw flip, I learned today that his name was Philip. In the Navy, aviation particularly, we all have call signs. I remember being embarrassed when I introduced some of my colleagues on active duty to my wife, and I didn't know their name. I just knew their call sign. But Flip has been the name for me, and it's nice to welcome him into the Navy family. The gold wings that he had pinned on his jacket there at the beginning of that of the show showed that he has had a handlebar mustache until the handlebar fell off all of his life, as far as I can tell. Is that right? Yeah, great picture. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit about Flip. I've known him for over 20 years as part of the Olympic Squadron, which is one of the squadrons in the Association of Naval Aviation. It's a fraternal organization that kind of takes aviators from all military backgrounds and interests and gives them an opportunity to reminisce about the good old days, as well as listen to speakers who keep them abreast of what's improving and changing in the future. And Flip, as a Marine Corps pilot wearing Navy wings during those 20 years, demonstrated to me that he was a uniquely talented, loyal, and patriotic gentleman, having more than just the exceptional hand-to-eye requirements for flying aircraft. Over the years, I've learned that the many talents he had and used throughout his life in support of his family, his community, and friends. He was, of course, a Marine, and that's what I wanted to clear early. The Marine Corps was in his blood as a result of his ancestral Marine Corps lineage. A Marine aviator who earned his wings of gold along with his Navy colleagues at Pensacola, Florida, the birthplace of naval aviation. In those days, and still today, if you're a Marine aviator going to a tactical squadron, in order to qualify with your Navy wings, you actually have to throw yourself at an aircraft carrier and make a few landings. He was one of those, as far as I know, because that's always been the requirement, but I wasn't able to document this in his log books, but Ida's nodding her head, so she clearly knows that was done. Thus he became one of the very few elite pilots who are able to go out and land on aircraft carriers bouncing around on the open ocean. During his time on active duty, subsequently as a Marine Corps Aviation Reservist at Sandpoint, he flew a variety of aircraft, including such ancients as the R4Q. How many of you know what the R4Q is? Don't confuse it with the RQ4. A training session will be held during the reception following the meeting. But the R4Q, you will perhaps remember, is the flying boxcar. You know, you jumped out of the back of this thing. It was also a great supply aircraft. And to show the wide range of experience with his flying, not only did it fly this post-World War II, pre-Vietnam boxcar, he also flew the F-9F Cougar. Now, any signs of recognition there? No. One of the very first Navy and Marine Corps swept-wing fighter jets. So he has quite a variety of backgrounds. Also, the F-3D Skyknight, the AD-6 single-engine reciprocating engine aircraft that was so vital even during the years of the Vietnam conflict and war. He served in both fighter and attack squadrons with the Marine Corps. Flip's military service to our country was only the tip of a creative iceberg that we've heard a little bit about, and we will more from our key theater presenter. He attended the University of Washington, as we've heard, and earned both bachelor and master's degrees there in aeronautical engineering. That formal education enhanced his military flying experience with the Marine Corps and was fundamental to his successful transition to civilian work with Boeing as a flight test engineer. As his career progressed, as it does in the military in flying, you realize that the more senior you get, the less flying you have an opportunity to do. And I think that was a very irritating thing to Flip, as it is to many of us as we move through the ranks. He retired after 28 years with Boeing in 1985, and as we've heard with Ida and family, enjoyed a productive second career as a consultant to aviation firms in Italy and in England. He reported that for about 6 years, he and Ida enjoyed European vacations paid for by somebody else. Over Flip's full and productive and loving life, the family established themselves in various locations and in various lifestyles, from life on Mercer Island to 2 years on their 35-foot sloop, and then eventually settling into the perfect spot in Cape George overlooking Discovery Bay. Flip and Ida have both used their advanced professional degrees. Am I spitting?
You're spitting.
Oh. It's the excitement of the moment. Flip and Ida have both used their advanced professional degrees to serve the communities in which they've lived, as well as for the fulfillment of goals for their family's development. In planning his retirement, I have learned, Flip stated that he hoped to follow the advice he had heard from a professional marathon runner training officer. The advice was this: in retirement, start slow and then taper off. It's a retirement that I've tried to fulfill. But if this was his plan, he failed miserably. Instead, he shifted from his professional technical efforts to an artistic, creative life with monthly trips to Seattle for Pacific Northwest Screenwriters Guild meetings, participation in Northwest Writers Association, and taking on publicity for the local Turtle Bluff Scholarship Fund. He wrote several plays, as we'll learn about. My wife and I attended at least one, and it was wonderful, wonderful. Additionally, he made a brief venture into public school mentoring, which he claimed taught him more than it helped the students. I find it hard to believe in one aspect and not so hard in the other. He was recognized, as we've heard, as the Volunteer of the Year by the Jefferson County Historical Society. That doesn't sound to me like starting out slow and tapering off. Flip was uniquely articulate and with a writing style which served both his left brain technical skills and the right brain artistic writing accomplishments. He agreed to our A&A squadron's request that he write a quarterly newsletter for the Association of Naval Aviation's flagship national magazine, Wings of Gold. He did so and is very well received across the country from his colleagues. I served with Flip for over 20 years in our fraternal squadron as members of its Commanding Officers Advisory Council. He was intelligent, unfailingly helpful, loyal, and had total integrity. I was blessed to know him and would have been proud to serve with or for him in any capacity. In August of 1963, President John Kennedy spoke to my plebe class at the U.S. Naval Academy, and as part of his remarks, he said, before I give this, I want to reaffirm that the Marine Corps and the Navy are part of the Department of the Navy. So this is the quote. I think any man who in this century may be asked what he did to make his life worthwhile can say with a great deal of pride and satisfaction, I served in the United States Navy. Both in uniform as an active duty and reserve Marine Corps pilot wearing Navy wings, and in industry as a flight test engineer, Flip served. Flip was a Marine's Marine, a gentleman, and a multifaceted, extremely intelligent and productive man. I will miss him.
Thank you so much, Captain Payne. And now we've heard about another aspect. He's an engineer, but he was also this amazing creative. So I would love to welcome the director, Denise Winter, forward on behalf of Key City Public Theater that was such a part of Flip's life. And you're welcome to use the podium or stand in the middle, whatever you want to do.
I'll use the podium a little bit. I'm honored to have been asked to be here today to speak on behalf of so many artists and theater collaborators, many of whom I see are here today, whose work in the theater was created by, impacted by, and enjoyed by Flip Wingrove. When I first came on the theater scene, I heard about Flip, and I heard two main things: that he was a winning playwright and that he was an avid theater goer. So of course he immediately earned a really big place in my heart, right out of the gate. And he never disappointed in all of our interactions since, and that place in my heart only grew from where it started. He was participating in our local Jefferson County one-act play competition long before I came on the scene here, the theater scene in Port Townsend. In fact, his first winning play was just the second year of that festival. And he continued to participate as a writer and an audience member in that festival and in the playwriting scene in our county for another 2+ decades. For Flip, it strikes me, why did he choose to tell stories through theater? And I think that it had to do with the fact that it was a reflection of how he spent his time here with all of us on Earth, and that was a full and rich life, well lived. And his plays had the ability to tackle issues of political and social aspects of the day, but to be made even more enjoyable through his keen wit and his satiric humor. His plays could tell a story by bringing it so vividly to life that they would reach out and grab you and hold you. And I think that was how he chose to always live. So he won many times in the playwriting competition, and he wrote avidly, and he continued to learn and take playwriting classes and workshops and participate on every level as a playwright and a collaborator in the theater. And he was way beyond being involved in it because of the competition. Most of his accolades in the theater are centered on the fact that he was a winning playwright. But it wasn't about competing for him, it was about collaborating. It was about sharing the knowledge that he had and being eager to learn what he didn't know. And he worked with playwrights, actors, directors of all ages, sharing his insights. And it was such a gift to all of us in the theater that we had that opportunity to work with someone who was learning and giving at the same time all the way through his journey in the arts. The last time that I had an in-person conversation with Flip, it was at Shakespeare in the Park in the summer of 2019. And he had made the journey down the hill and was sitting in the front row for Merry Wives of Windsor. And I remembered seeing in Ida's eyes that that trip down that hill was a journey. It was a challenge. And he sat there in the front row with his trademark smile that is gold for every performer to see from an audience member. And at intermission, I had the opportunity to chat with him, and he said, "Denise, this is the most that I have ever understood a Shakespeare play. I'm really enjoying it." And I thought, that's Flip, right? The avid theater goer. He was going to go to see every play that he could see in this community, whether he knew he would like it or was fairly certain he wouldn't. But he was going to be there, and he was going to be there for his fellow artists, for the storytelling. Because I think for Flip, being in a room full of your community and sharing one of life's many stories is not unlike what we're doing today. And it was incredibly important to him. And he made that known to every artist whose life he touched in the course of his journey through being an artist and a playwright here in Port Townsend. And I know that I will miss that giant smile looking up at that stage, but I know that his spirit is here in this room and will continue to resonate inside the walls of every theater in Jefferson County. So I'm grateful for that, and I thank him for it.
Thank you, Denise. And now Ida asks on behalf of this Unity spiritual family that they were such a part of, that my own dear Lane, my husband, is going to speak for a few moments on Flip and his presence here at Unity.
Getting up isn't what it used to be.
Yes, yes. You want me to hold your props?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm totally honored to be here, and I'm so inspired by all these wonderful stories about a man that I thought I knew very well. Okay, thank you. But I'm very honored to be here, and especially amongst these stellar people that Flip shared his life with. And I thank Ida for thinking enough of me to ask me to speak today. Not to be confused, the fact that I'm not wearing a nice suit and out of respect to Flip and the family, I should be wearing a tuxedo or something really outstanding. But in respect to Ida and the family, I wanted Flip to recognize me. Flip is the kind of guy that you knew all your life, even when you just met him. There was something about him to me. There's only 3 people in this church older than I, and he was obviously one. No one that I respected more. I would try to engage him in a conversation about things that I was interested in, about his endeavors and his accomplishments and his flying and things, and he always turned the conversation around, always. He'd say, Lane, but what about when in Mexico when you were in the mountains? And what about your grandfather being captured by Pancho Villa? And he always turned the conversation around. He always wanted to know more about my life. And I was like that long-lost friend that he never knew until that day. So I was grateful for that. The thing I'm most grateful for and envious of is that it took me quite a while to find the perfect lady in my life, and till just now. He had his for so many years, and I admire him for that. I have found my perfect lady as of recently, 28 years ago. So the thing about Flip that I want to share that was
I'll be Vanna White.
an example, we had been in this church not long, and he came in one day and he said, Lane, we've shared some good stories, but we've been out shopping recently. And I said, I found this thing, and it just isn't me. He said, I looked at it, and I found out it's just you. So he said, would you take this as a gift from me? And I said, I'd be honored. I wore this damn thing for at least 9 years. The collar's worn out. The last conversation I had with Flip Wingrove was about mid-row back there, and I wore this. And I sat next to him, and I said, I wonder if he'll recognize the significance of that. And Liz was sitting next to us, and he beamed, and he said, I remember that. He said, that was awesome. I said, well, I can't tell you anything that made me happier, and I wear it constantly. So that was one thing. The last super meaningful gesture was this sweet little person in the final planning of this event today showed up at my doorstep as though she didn't have anything better to do that day. She was coming down here to make final arrangements for a garage sale or something. And she said, you know, you were one of my husband's best friends. Something that surprised me greatly. Made me feel like his best friend. She said, I think you were larger than he, certainly in later years. So he had some favorite sweaters. I wonder if you would be willing to take these and try them. And I said, well, I think it probably won't fit. But I said, please leave them. Well, she left. I went in and put it on, and it fit like a glove. I put this thing on. I raced back down to the church where she was meeting Pam, walked through the door, and she got a tear in her eye, and she said, yeah, it works, doesn't it? So that's Flip Wingrove. I will wear this and honor it as I do the family. My condolences to the family. To Ida, I loved your husband dearly, and you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lane. And we have one more person who I'm so thrilled to welcome up here to share. Michael Hines is here on behalf of the Breakfast Club, a very important part of Flip's life. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Flip. His blue eyes, they swallowed you. When he looked at you, you held his complete attention. He asked questions about my stories with deep intent. He was curious. He supported the art of others and their participation in the community. Mark and Jolly's Mandela Center for Change, Theater of the Oppressed, Playback Theater, playwrights and plays, as we've heard at Key City, and poetry at North Winds. When I asked a poet friend what she remembers about Flip, that is what she said. His blue eyes, they swallow you. I'm speaking for the Tuesday Morning Breakfast Club, and Flip enjoyed breakfast there every Tuesday for about 20 years, maybe longer. And every Tuesday with what I call a chosen family, my chosen family, and it was a delight. I can say without exception, it was a treat and has been a joy to sit next to him, to share discussion, and of course the food. Particularly, Flip enjoyed the multiple generations in our playback theater troupe. Several times he saw and came to know an actor in her mid-teens and her imagination at work. Imagining is the way of playback theater. That teenager has been a freshman at the University of Washington and is the Youth Poet Laureate of Seattle. A book of her poetry was published this year, and a poem I want to share. Imagining. I see Sappho in every sculpture without a face, in every articulation of form. I walked through a cathedral today. I ran through a gallery and I didn't stop to think about anything more than the shape of the artist's desire, to listen to the sound the rain makes on the glass roof and remember it's raining. I walked through a cathedral today. I ran through a gallery and I didn't stop to think of anything more than the shape of the artist's desire, the artist's heart. I thank Xenia Hansen for the poem and the opportunity to read her book, and Flip knew her and would be very pleased, probably is very pleased, to have her poem read today, because he really respected her imagination. And when you go to a play at Key City, please look for the chair with Flip's name on it. It's there, he's there. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. And we could be here all day and into the week, I have no doubt, if each one of us was able to come up and share. But we are going to have a reception after this, so please share your stories with one another and know that just the right people are going to touch each other with a story that they'll be able to smile and laugh over as they remember Flip. And so in celebration of all of these memories and the ones we each hold, please receive this inspiration from one of my favorite spiritual writers, John O'Donohue, on the death of the beloved. Though we need to weep your loss, you dwell in that safe place in our hearts where no storm or night or pain can reach you. Your love was like the dawn brightening over our lives, awakening beneath the dark a further adventure of color. The sound of your voice found for us a new music that brightened everything. Whatever you enfolded in your gaze quickened in the joy of its being. You place smiles like flowers on the altar of the heart. Your mind always sparkled with wonder at things. Though your days were brief, your spirit was alive, awake, and complete. We looked towards each other no longer from the old distance of our names. Now you dwell inside the rhythm of breath, as close to us as we are to ourselves. Though we cannot see you with outward eyes, we know our soul's gaze is upon your face, smiling back at us from within everything to which we bring our best refinement. Let us look for you not only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find your presence beside us when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When orchids brighten the earth, darkest winter has turned to spring. May this dark grief flower with hope in every heart that loves you. May you continue to inspire us to enter each day with a generous heart, to serve the call of courage and love until we see your beautiful face again. In that land where there will be no more separation, where all tears will be wiped from our mind, and where we will never lose you again. During Flip's final days in the hospital, Ida brought her violin in. And then at the right moment, she got it out and began to play. She played the piece Ashokan Farewell that you'll hear in just a moment. As she played that, he smiled a little smile. We all know Flip's sweet smile. And said, "It's about time." He loved to hear her play. And so to this soaring music, may their souls dance anew, even though one remains in body and the other has shifted to spirit. Connie Rehnquist with Ashokan Farewell. And so, to that beautiful sound, I invite you to prepare for a prayer of release. Take a moment to remember how Flip touched your life and how you touched his in return. Be in joy and in gratitude for the gift of our presence in each other's lives. Feel his presence in your heart and across the thresholds of time and space. From this place of faith, grace, and celebration, prepare to release him from this earthly plane and into the arms of divine spirit. Let us pray. Infinite presence of God, Holy Comforter, divine Spirit of grace, and silent witnesses, angels, and masters, all present here with us. Enfold, mantle, and bless us, that we may feel thy presence, and that we may be one across the veil of spirit with Flip, in eternal love, peace, and blessings. We ask you to welcome Flip into thy world everlasting with open arms as we release him from our earthly embrace. We ask you to bless Flip with renewed strength, deep inner peace, and new dedication as we send him forth to his next soul unfolding. May every good abide with Flip, and may he feel our loving presence until we are blessed to meet again. Keep us attuned in the loving, grateful presence and awareness of the beloved, in the name and through the presence of the Christ. And so it is. Amen. And now the gift of a final reading and an ancient blessing that you'll find in your bulletin. I know that the words and the energies held in this inspiration are truly Flip's parting gift to us. Ascension by Colleen Cora Hitchcock. And if I go while you're still here, know that I live on, vibrating to a different measure, behind a thin veil you cannot see through. You will not see me, so you must have faith. I wait for the time we soar together again, both aware of each other. Until then, live your life to the fullest. And when you need me, just whisper my name in your heart. I will be there. And so, beloved Flip, go forth with all of our love and this most ancient of blessings. This will be followed by Ode to Joy. Flip, the Lord bless and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and grant you peace. You are loved. to share your stories, to offer one another support, and to enfold Ida and the family in your embrace near and far. Blessings to you all, and blessings to you, Flip. You made a difference, sweetheart. You're amazing. And so, welcome to the reception, and share your stories.